Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, episode number 210. On today's show, you'll hear from Mr. Scott Carroll. Scott, along with his co-host, Brad Frost, have a program called Accept the Challenge TV, where they hunt across North America for whitetails and turkeys and other critters, as well as travel to the Dark Continent, Africa, and hunt plains game. Scott's going to tell us stories about the joy of being a hunter, the joy of sharing the hunting tradition with his son, and lessons learned from his dad about hunting. Hey, listeners, don't forget to text 33444 Food Plot for your free Food Plot ebook. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, Bruce Hutchin, and we're going to connect with Scott Carroll. Scott Carroll is from Columbus, Georgia, and he is the co-host of Accept the Challenge TV. Scott, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's fun having you, and we're going to talk about hunting whitetails, hunting in Africa, and we're also going to talk about family time and the joy you find with your son hunting in a tree stand in North America or over in the, as they call the Dark Continent. So I'm excited about the show, Scott.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you. Anytime we can sit down and talk about hunting, it's a good time.
Yes, sir, it is. So let's kick it right off and tell us about Accept the Challenge. It's in its 8th season, and it's on Fox Sports Southeast. So let's tell us about it.
Well, we're also on Roku, Gen 7 channel. So anybody in the U.S. with Roku, they can go and download the Gen 7 app and just do a search for Accept Challenge TV, and they can watch it there on Roku. If they're not in the Southeast, they can go to our website at www.acceptthechallenge.tv. We, got the Facebook and Instagram, but me and my partner, Brad Frost, we've created Accept the Challenge TV. We've been in business. This is our 12th year. We started with a video production company. We called it Archery Adventures because we primarily like to bow hunt. We do some rifle hunting as well. But we started out doing videos, and it all started really from a trip to Africa back in like 2002 when we were filming, and I was passing up shots because Brad couldn't get the animal on film. And, after that, I was like, why am I passing up shots, of a once-in-a-lifetime animal? You don't get to go to Africa, certainly, every day. And so I was like, well, maybe somebody should be paying us or something if shots. That's the only way it makes any sense. So, I come up with the idea, and I mentioned it to him, and he liked it. So we went to our family and our friends, and I guess we were kind of hoping for somebody to tell us how crazy we were, but nobody did. They said, man, as much as you guys love to hunt and travel, I think you guys would do a great job of it, and I think you ought to do it. And we're like, well, heck, now we got to do it. So it started with the video, and then we had a guy here locally that was asking for a lot of our footage because he didn't have enough for his own TV show. And then, again, that got us thinking, well, if he's going to ask for our footage and he's making money off our footage, why don't we do our own show? And I certainly don't want it to make it sound like it's all about money, but that is what makes the world go around, so to speak. But when you're passing up shots, you're over on a trip of a lifetime, and you're not getting anything in return. You're just doing it for, basically home video. It don't make a whole lot of sense. And to just give your footage away and getting good positive reviews on it, that didn't make a whole lot of sense either when that's really what we wanted to do. So we kind of dropped the video thing and went with our name of our video series was Accept the Challenge, Texas or Africa or whatever, we may be doing that, big game. Those were some of the names we had for some of our videos. And that's kind of how it all evolved. Kind of started kind of small, and then, who would have thought, 12 years later we'd be sitting here talking about it again, still today.
Well, that's awesome. And so you filmed whitetail hunt and offer also the plains games in Africa, or also the Big Five?
We would like to do a buffalo, maybe a leopard. I can do a leopard. Brad's wife, they're big cat fans, so she said the only way he can shoot a cat is if it's attacking. So I'll be glad to shoot a leopard with my bow. I'd like to shoot a leopard, buffalo with my bow. I don't really care for a lion, an elephant, and a hippo, but different strokes for different folks, sort of thing. So we pretty much we concentrate on the plains game, and we've been fortunate. We leave next Tuesday to go back. This will be my 6th trip. So we've been fortunate. We've taken quite a few plains game, and to be honest with you, I'm just really going after a kudu with my bow this trip, and maybe a black wildebeest. I've shot both, but they were with a gun, so I try to like to do it with a bow. But what Brad and I really get a kick out of is taking people that have never been to Africa, because we get to relive it through them all over again, and it's a joy just sitting there watching their face when these animals are coming to these water holes, and then it hits them that they're in Africa. And in 2004, I had like the ultimate dream come true when I got to take my son over there. He graduated from high school, and I remember going in 2000 and thinking, I'm not going back until I can take Corey with me, or he can tell me, I'll see you when you get back. Lo and behold, I ended up going like 3 more times before he ended up going with me. It does. You've heard it before. It gets in your blood, and it just calls you back. You're like, man, I just got to go sit over a water hole and listen to all the birds and see all the animals come in. And we had a hunt over there with impala, where they were rutting and chasing and grunting, probably 60 to 80 impala. I mean, we had one Hank standing out in front of us. He had a horn hanging out of his neck where he had been fighting. I mean, it was just incredible. I didn't even want to shoot because I didn't want to ruin the action.
Wow. Did I lose you?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and that sounds incredible. Let's just talk about the guys and gals in North America that haven't enjoyed a trip. How does whitetail hunting help you be a patient archer over in Africa?
Well, you'll learn a lot if you hunt whitetail for any great amount of time, and that is without question my favorite animal to hunt. I guess because a whitetail comes in so many different shapes, sizes, and you can shoot a 10-point, but there's a 110-inch 10-point, and there's a 180-inch 10-point, and they're all different. With turkeys, you're only talking a couple of pounds here and there, and a quarter of an inch on a spur, an inch on a beard. So it's kind of the same thing with the African game. They're all very similar. With whitetail, it's different, but I guess it just kind of all resorts back to, just patience. Being a hunter, you want to take that first killing shot that a whitetail offers you. And same thing with African game. When you're hunting over a water hole, with the slight exception is when they're coming into water, they're nervous, they're on edge, and that's where they are attacked by leopards and lions and stuff, so they're on their guard. So if you let them come in and settle down and let that first 1 or 2 drink, then the others relax, so you're shooting a much calmer animal than, say you would, just like you'd be shooting a whitetail when he's standing out there stomping his foot at you. Not the ideal time to shoot at him because he's already on alert, probably going to duck, and you're going to end up making a bad shot or missing, hopefully, if that's the case. So, just really learning the animals. Each animal's different, and kind of learning, body behavior and whatnot. But nothing beats experience.
You got that right, and you've got some great experiences. Now, and Accept the Challenge, do you do both North American and African TV shows?
We do. The last couple of years, we've been trying to do a couple of shows from Africa, but we realize, most guys want to see whitetails and turkeys. If you look at statistics, and we've done it in the past, whitetail, turkey, hogs, and bear, elk, those are like your top 5 with whitetail dominating, the number 1 spot. And if you think about it, I think it's because there are pretty much whitetails in all the lower 48. Pretty much the same with turkey. There's a lot of hogs in a lot of the states now. And then, people have traveled out west to hunt elk, of course, and bear. But so, we try to offer all those animals on our show where a guy can, he may not watch the Africa show because he don't care anything about it, but he'll tune in next week because we got whitetail or whatever. So we try to offer a little bit for everybody. We even, we do some gun hunting because guys like to hear the gun go off and they like to hear that big gun roar. So we do the gun hunting. We prefer archery. I would say I probably prefer it more over Brad. He's probably 50-50. It doesn't matter. As long as he's hunting and he's successful, he don't care whether it's bow or gun. To me, it means a little bit more if I take something with my Matthews than it does if I'm shooting my CVA, just because we call it accept a challenge. So we try to make it as challenging as possible, and but to each his own. As long as you're hunting legally and ethically, we have no problem with it. We try to do what we enjoy doing. And just so happens we like going bear hunting. We like going hog hunting. We like going turkey hunting and whitetail hunting, of course. So, I think our show kind of fills the bill for it's got a little something for everybody.
Let's spend about 5 minutes because there's just a tremendous amount of people that send me email all the time. They say, "Hey, Bruce, how do I get in the outdoor industry? How do I build a TV show?" So if you could just kind of line us out for the listeners, what it takes, and take about 5 minutes or so, and tell some of your struggles and when you found the sweet spot, what that meant.
Well, first off, it takes a lot of time. And you're going to need a partner or two because one guy just can't do it. And the best way to do it is find somebody that you enjoy spending time with, and you're not ready to cut his throat after 4 or 5 days. In a ground blind in Africa or sitting in a whitetail stand in Kansas and it's 8 degrees. You got to have somebody you're compatible with. And, you're not ready to kill each other, but you both you got to love it. If you don't love it, you're just wasting your time. A lot of guys think, man, I got a camera. I can go out and I can shoot 13 episodes, 13 trips to the field. Well, that's not the case by no means. And, people tell us all the time we make it look easy because if we showed you all the times we weren't successful, you'd quit watching the show because you'd be bored to death. I mean, it'd be too much like real hunting. But the struggles are definitely getting the sponsors, and we've been fortunate. We have a lot of sponsors that have been with us through the years: Next Camo, Matthews, CVA, Hunter Safety System, Luminoc. We've got some great sponsors, and there's some great people behind those sponsors. It's not just great products; it's people we enjoy dealing with. So if you can get those 6 or 8 or 10 sponsors that stay on every year, you're always going to have to add 1 or 2 every year because of attrition for whatever reason, the economy. People just don't make it or they can't do what they did the past year. But you're also picking up an extra few. So we pride ourselves on doing what the sponsor needs us to do to make them happy, make them successful, because when we call them up the following year, they're ready to re-up. They're like, hey, we got a check waiting on you. So we're very loyal as far as our sponsors go, and I think you need to be that way. If you're jumping around just because somebody's got a little bit better deal, a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that, and you're jumping around and you're not loyal to anybody, sooner or later it's going to catch up with you. So we've been very fortunate. We've got sponsors that are good sponsors. They've been in the industry. It's quality equipment. We believe in it, and it helps make us more successful. Getting started, that's the hardest thing is taking the plunge and putting forth the money and time that it takes to, you got to have quality equipment. You can't go and just buy you a high camera or some high def camera and think, you're going to put it on TV. Now, if you want to do web episodes, I'm sure it would be fine for that. But there's a lot to learn as far as building a good show, and when you get back and you edit all your footage down, does it make sense? You know, when a guy watches it, does he even know where you were hunting at, and or all he saw was you were in a tree, and then he saw you shoot an arrow and a deer ran off, and then you found it. You know, you didn't show him why you were in that tree, why you picked that spot, how you set your stand up. You know, is there a food source behind you and a bedding area in front, whatever the case may be. So we try to tell the story and make it enjoyable. And I think a couple of our best compliments we've gotten is guys say, hey, man, I could see me hunting with you. You know, you guys seem down to earth and, you know, just like me. And the other is kids seem to enjoy our show. You know, maybe that's because we're comical. I don't know. But we run a series of bloopers at the end of our show because Lord knows when you're filming as much as we are, we have some tongue twisters and some things that are just too funny to leave out. So we usually run that at the end of the show when we're running our pro staffers and our credits and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot to do. I mean, we could talk a lot longer than 5 minutes, but I know you're limited on time. But I would say in a nutshell, find you a good partner or two, invest in some good cameras, good tripod, fluid heads, good microphones, and just go out and practice with this stuff and see how much work it takes to get it done, and then decide if you want to go forward. But I would concentrate first off just making you some really jam up home movies and see how much time it takes carrying a 40-pound pack in the woods every time you go hunting, and see if you're really committed to doing your own show.
Thanks for sharing that. And listeners, it's work. It's a joy, and you love it, but it's work. And I've been fortunate to be in the mountains and in a camp where there were some other people filming, and I couldn't believe how hard they worked every single day. And they might not get a harvest. They might not put an animal down.
We've done.
That's the reality. Go ahead, Scott.
We've done shows before that, you know, we've just had so much incredible footage that we just said, look, you know, this show's going to be a little bit different. If you're here to see an animal get shot, you know, if you're into this whack 'em and stack 'em, this ain't going to be your show. But it's close calls, it's misses, it's beautiful sunsets, it's animals, you know, at close range fighting or whatever the case may be, you know. And I think one thing Brad and I always said is if it ever become like a job, we would quit. And if it ever took the fun out of what used to be our pastime, our stress relief, we would give it up. And if it ever come between our friendship, we would give it up. So you have to put boundaries on it and kind of separate things, and it takes up a lot of your personal time, and it can be, you know, I've known guys to get divorced over, you know, because they're gone all the time, and it just takes up so much time, and you certainly don't want that to happen. But it's a lot of work, and I mean, I wouldn't discourage anybody from trying, you know, going after their dream. I just want them to be fully aware of how much work goes into it.
Thanks so much for that. And let's touch on something that you shared in the warm-up about the joy you find hunting with your son. And let's talk about the family tradition for the Carrolls, the family hunting tradition.
All right. Well, my son, Corey, he's 20 years old. And, you know, the way I was raised, me and my brother, we grew up hunting with my dad and my granddad. And, you know, back then, hunting in Georgia, you know, you had 2 or 3 doe days where you could shoot a doe, and we wanted to make sure we were in the woods because we knew we were probably going to get to squeeze the trigger, where any other day we may or may not. And this was well before trophy management, and back in those days you could shoot like 2 bucks and 1 or 2 does, and we'd usually shoot whatever buck we saw first legal deer, and then we would always try to hold on to that second tag for something we'd put on the wall. And my dad has always been high on ethics, and we have gotten thrown out of many hunting clubs because those guys were baiting before it was legal and shooting over the limit, and it really took the fun out of hunting for my dad. But it taught me and my brother, you know, great respect for, you know, there are game laws for a reason, and it's to protect what we love, and that's the animals that we pursue, and our money goes to protect them. And if our money for licenses are going to protect them, but yet we're breaking the law, I mean, that's kind of counterproductive. So we were raised in a very strict, you're going to go by the game laws, and we did everything by the book, and we were still successful. And just that tradition of going out and hunting with my dad, I mean, heck, I'm sure it kept me out of a lot of trouble, because if I wasn't playing baseball or football, I was hunting, so I didn't have time to get in much trouble. And so I tried to instill the same thing in my son. It's something that my granddad has passed on, but yet I still have cherished memories with him. And I'm hopefully my son will have the same with my dad and with myself after we're gone, and he'll be passing it down to his kids. And one day he'll look back and say, hey, your granddaddy took me to Africa for my graduation, and I hope one day we're back over there with his kids. So that's it runs deep, and it means a lot to us.
Thanks for sharing that. When you think about your hunting experiences, what's one big thing that you've taken away that have stayed with you for your hunting years?
Oh, man. That's a hard question. I mean, it could go a number of ways. It could go with, you're not always successful when you go out, but hey, that don't mean it wasn't a good day. You don't always have to kill an animal for it to be a good day. And I remember growing up, one of my neighbors, when I was in my teens, he wasn't a hunter or anything, but he didn't have anything against it. But I remember saying something to him about, hey, we go. Of course, we would like to go to Colorado and kill an elk every time, and go to Kansas and shoot a nice whitetail, and go to Canada and shoot a nice bear. But that's reason to go. That's a reason to go, and that's a trophy we could bring back and hang on the wall and have something to remember. But we're getting to see different parts of the country and the world that hunting is allowing us to do that. And I remember him saying, that means a lot that you said that. It ain't about the killing. So I think anybody that's a true hunter is all about the experience. And just because you don't get an animal on that particular trip, that doesn't mean it wasn't a success, and you don't have great memories of it. So that's one thing. And the one thing I think I enjoy the most about what we do is the people that we get to meet. I mean, now we've got friends in Canada and Wyoming and Utah and Namibia and South Africa. I mean, it's just incredible to be able to say that you have friends that are, in all these parts of the country, in Texas and Kansas. I mean, geez, we've got like family in Kansas now. I mean, it's so we've been blessed. I mean, and that doesn't have, I mean, it come about because of hunting, but I mean, we're just friends now. I mean, we're friends outside of hunting, and we call each other up just to chat and text. And so those are the things that if Brad and I joke all the time that if it doesn't ever turn to anything else, we've got some great home movies and we made some awesome friends.
That sounds pretty good to me, Scott.
Hey, I take it any day. I mean, and you're not going to get in this industry and make it rich. I mean, there's only a handful that are, they're just going to sit back and do this all day long, 24/7 for a living. It does turn into 24/7 because you go to bed doing it and you dream about it and you wake up and you start it all over a lot of times. I mean, I'm a taxidermist, but I spend more time doing this than I do mountain deer and ducks and fish and stuff. So it will consume your spare time. But there's always reason to go hunting because you've always got, bow fishing. You've got sponsors that they need footage and they need photographs. So there's something going on all year long, and it's great reason to get out in the woods or out on the water. So we take advantage of it when we can.
Hey, thanks for that. And somebody a couple of weeks ago shared about the common ground of hunting, and I liked how they said it. They said, when we sit around a campfire in a hunting camp or a table in the cook shack, we're all equal because we're after the same thing. We're after the joy of the hunt, the excitement, the adventure of the hunt, and at the end, many times we put a period on the hunt and harvest that game, but it's the common ground. Your thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, Brad and I kind of joke, if you remember back before all the smartphones and the texting and all, you didn't know what your buddy saw till you got back to camp, or you're sitting around the campfire and you're telling the story about how that buck come in on you and surprised you or whatever. Well, nowadays with texting and all, before you even get back to the truck, you know what that guy saw and this guy and this girl. And so, I tell him all the time, I said, we're going to have to take a day or two each trip and just go no cell phones, and we'll get back and we'll talk about it, over the campfire. Or, that's the beauty of going to Africa. When you get back, that stuff doesn't work over there. So you're getting around, they call it bush TV over there. That's when you're sitting around watching the fire and telling campfire stories. And those are some of the greatest memories I have of going camping and hunting with my dad and granddad. We used to pick the coldest day of the year, and we'd go camp with no tent. We'd make lean tools and build a fire and put our lean tools in a. There was 4 of us, so we made a square there with a fire in the middle. And if we had a bottle of water out and it didn't freeze solid, it didn't get cold enough, so we had to do it again later in the year.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we were young and dumb, and believe it or not, my dad and granddad went along with it. I don't know. It was kind of their idea, but, it was one of them things that, it was crazy, and don't too many people do it much anymore, but that's kind of when we go camping. If it's not cold enough for a fire, it's not camping weather.
Wow, you just popped a memory. My son here in Colorado is an Eagle Scout, and one of the things we did together, we got the below zero patch, and I can think about the ice caves, and yeah, it was cold, but just sitting inside, a snow cave, ice cave with a candle going, those memories never go away. I mean they bond you.
Yeah, the conditions. You remember the extremely hot or the extremely cold. I mean, you remember how cold it got in Kansas out in the Midwest a couple of years ago, and we talk about those hunts still today. About, man, I can't believe how it was 8 degrees, and we sit all day, and and I remember Brad telling me there's only one person I know that would sit all day, and it's 8 degrees with a 15-mile-an-hour wind, and you're it, and you're crazy, and we've done it, and we ain't doing it again.
Well, I earned my Saskatchewan buck by 5 days at 20 degrees below in hail bale blind, actually hay bale blind, and I couldn't turn the heater on because it was way too noisy. But I looked like the Michelin Man or whatever.
Well, you guys can put up with a lot more cold. We're not, Southern boys, we're not used to 8 degrees. We like it in the 30s with, 5 to 7 mile an hour wind. That's about as windy as we want it. But, you go out west, and that's the thing about the two difference in the deer. Here, when the wind blows 15, 20 miles an hour, the deer are tight. They're not moving. You're better off walking and trying to kick something up or not go at all. But in the Midwest, if you didn't go when it was windy, you wouldn't hunt very much. And if the deer didn't move when it was windy, they wouldn't move hardly at all. So that's one of the great things. And I tell everybody all the time, deer in the Midwest do what deer were programmed, the way God programmed it. You grunt at them, they react. You rattle, they react. You do that here in the South. They don't think another deer. They think, oh, that's a hunter. That's a grunt. That's a hunter. That's a rattle. That's a hunter. I mean, they just act different. I've rattled up a few deer here, and I've grunted in more than I've rattled in. But you just get much better reaction out in the Midwest, and that's why we love going. I mean, the deer are bigger, obviously, but you get to see deer more in their natural state, and I believe it's more because there's about, each state varies, but there's about 7 to 12 days of gun season, and then the rest is bow hunting. We're here in Georgia and Alabama. I mean, you can chase them for 3 months out of the year practically with a gun. I mean, you start doing that to an animal with half a brain, he's going to learn to go nocturnal and what to do and what not to do. And so to kill a 140 here, it's a much bigger accomplishment than killing a 140 in Kansas. So, every trophy is relevant to where you're hunting. So we love hunting whitetails no matter where we are, though.
I sure agree to that. And when you were talking about grunting and wheezing and rattling, I started elk hunting here a long time ago, and I remember we were using turkey calls for our elk calls and diaphragm calls, and that's how we learned. And then all of a sudden, the elk got smart. And I hardly bugle at all. I'll bugle at 4:30 in the morning. At dark 30, I'll get above a base and I'll bugle. And if someone comes back at me, then it's game on. But I shut up. It's spot and stalk, and it's just stealth hunting. And if I get in close, if I'm inside the herd, I'll cow call just a little bit or mew. And I found that helps a lot, because right now I can tell you, if you come out west, especially in Colorado, where we have open seasons, some districts, you just buy a tag and go elk hunting. Well, there's a lot of people doing it, and I'm all for that. But the elk, just like the deer you're talking about down south, they get smart real fast, and there's only so many basins, and you've got a couple hundred people on one drainage, or 10 people. Just depends how big it is. It challenges you, so you got to adapt, and I guess that's the biggest thing. And I hear you saying that loud and clear. You got to adapt to the situation and where you're hunting.
Yep, exactly. I mean, you even here, if you're hunting public land for deer and turkey, you got to rethink the entire way of how you're hunting. Where, I mean, it may be just something as simple to hunt near a bedding area where you think deer are going to be pushed to once everybody gets out and starts moving around at 10:30. If you can sit midday when everybody's up going back to the truck to get lunch and stuff, I kind of let the other hunters help me out in ways like that, and even with calling turkeys, I think less is more on public ground like that, because let's face it, most guys have a tendency to call too much, call too often, and they don't stay still very long. I think the minimum time to just kind of cold call for a turkey, if you sit down, you ain't heard a bird, ain't heard nothing, ain't seen nothing, sit down, give it at least an hour. Because when I was younger, I can't tell you how many times me and my dad used to pop up after about 30, 40 minutes and think nothing's coming in, and lo and behold, there's a long tom coming in right to the decoys, and we couldn't see him while we were sitting down. So we kind of give it that 1 hour rule, and then we'll move on. But I think a lot of guys, they're bumping so many birds, and they've been calling. Bird comes in, sees them, so now when he hears calling, he's coming in on edge, and you don't hear quite as much gobbling on the public land, especially once they hit the ground, because they realize, hey, when I start gobbling, there's a lot of hunters showing up and a lot of coyotes showing up, so they get tight-lipped.
Hey, Scott, we're coming up to the end of the show, and I want to give you a minute or so to give shout-outs to as many sponsors as you can, and then we'll call it a show.
All right, well, I thank you for that. Got to give a shout-out to Next Camo, Locked On 360. It's a mobile gun vise. You guys go check that out. It's great for kids and women trying to shoot bigger guns. It mounts on your blind or your shooting house or your ladder stand. So it's a great device. CVA, Luminoc, phoning, hunter safety system, killing sticks, Wacom broadheads, QAD rest. Barnett crossbows, Tenzing Plano. I feel like I'm on a NASCAR commercial now, but
you sound like you are.
Yeah, we've got, like I said, we've got some great sponsors. Fourth Arrow, Carbon Skin. And, each one of them, serves a purpose, and we have them on board for a reason. We don't just go out and just kind of hog up sponsors. They have to serve a purpose for us, and they have to be something that fits kind of our need and how we hunt. But, we could get them for a year, but if it doesn't fit the way we hunt, we're not going to do them any good. They're not going to be happy, and it's going to be a one-year relationship, and we're really not into that. We want to build long-term relationships where we can develop friendships and trust, and we know what to expect out of them. They know what to expect out of us, and it just seems to work better that way. I'm sure I forgot a couple, and
sure.
Lord forgive me, but I'd have had a list if I'd known I was going to have that kind of opportunity.
Well, apologies to the sponsors we left out. Scott, let's do this. Let's get you back on the show in 6 months or so, and before the hunting season, and you can tell us what you've been doing and how Africa was, and I'd love to have you on the show.
Oh, it'd be great. I'd love to have my partner with me, and me and Brad, we could just hack it up with you and talk hunting, and you could meet Brad, and we could introduce him to your listeners.
Well, that'd be great. So on behalf of Whitetail Rendezvous across North America, thank you, Scott Carroll of Accept the Challenge TV, co-host, and his other host is Brad Frost. So, Scott, thank you for being on the show.
All right, Bruce, thank you, and I appreciate your listeners tuning in. And, guys, please go to our Facebook page if you don't mind, Accept the Challenge TV. We're giving away great prizes every month, and got to know Ryan Cooler, another one of our sponsors. We'll be giving away that soon. It's a great cooler, so you guys go check us out on Facebook for your chance to win a lot of great prizes.
James Boreal joins us tomorrow. It's going to be an interesting show, folks, because James spends a lot of time in Europe hunting in Spain. And what he told me is hunting, no matter where you are in the world, it's all about the hunt and the people you meet. And there's nothing better than sitting and talking hunting with people from around the world. Oh yeah, he's created a hunter's tool, which you're going to find very interesting and might be something you want to consider.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.